Julie McLaughlin was 18 and pregnant. Labeled as a good Catholic girl from a good family, a singer in a group at church, president of the Catholic Youth Organization, she was embarrassed, ashamed, and felt helpless. This was during an era when teenage pregnancy was not easily accepted, and the lessons she learned from that experience has supported her throughout her life. You do not want to miss this interview.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Julie is a retired paralegal and first-time author who has won numerous awards as a writer. She also shares how writing can be a healing tool for each of us. Her story may make you laugh, it may make you cry, but it will definitely give you hope. Welcome, Julie.
Oh, Carol, thank you so much for having me on your incredible show.
I am looking forward so much, as I know the audience is, to hearing your story. And I know that many people in the audience are going to relate. So let's start with tell us your story.
Well, for more than half of my life, I kept a secret from most of the people in my life, including my two daughters.
Wow.
It was a secret I did not have to keep from my husband, however, because he was the father of this situation. At age 18, I turned 19 when I actually delivered. I got pregnant with my boyfriend, now husband's baby. It was the summer after our freshman year of college, and I was just not ready to be a mom. My now husband, then boyfriend, did want to get married, but I just wasn't ready to do that. Long story short, I made the very difficult decision to place my baby up for adoption. I was blessed to know some people kind of in the circle of the adoption situation. And I went away to a home for unwed mothers during my pregnancy. When I started showing in October, I had just turned 19 years old. Those were the days of no cell phones. I didn't have a car.
Mhm.
I was about an hour away from my family. Was the oldest of 5 children in a loving family, and I was ashamed, humiliated, embarrassed. I couldn't believe I've been asked the question, how did this happen? Well, God knows how it happened. But at any rate, I made the very difficult decision to give my baby up for adoption. I had had a wonderful experience in knowing a family who had actually adopted a child. And I had seen firsthand the indescribable joy that he brought into their life. So
Right.
in that environment, I was able to, so I made that decision. We
Let me interrupt you for a moment, Julie. Was the
absolutely.
decision, did you also have to decide between abortion and adoption? Was that even, in your thinking process? And if so, what was it?
Yes, it was. Abortion had become legal. And for me, that was not anything that I would have wanted to do. Um, so yes, it was out there, but in my mind, it was not something that I that I entertained at that time. I just wanted to give this child a chance at life. And knowing the environment of this adoption scenario, I felt comfortable with it. And
Okay.
so that was the decision I went with. I will say that no one made the decision for me, not the father, not my parents, not his parents, not the parish priest. No, this was entirely a decision I made on my own, with just the understanding of wanting to just give this child the chance at a better life. I was the oldest of 5 kids. My youngest brother was only 8 years old, maybe 6 at the time. I'm trying to think. And, it wasn't something I wanted to put my family through
Mm-hmm.
either. I was going to do this, and I was going to do it, on my own. um,
Other than your parish priest and your boyfriend and your parents, who else knew?
Maybe a handful, maybe 2 or 3 friends is all we told.
Okay.
Later in life, we did find out that a couple people knew, but believe it or not, it was the secret, quote unquote. So it really, I even had relatives in Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin, and this was happening in the city of Pittsburgh where I lived. My whole family in Wisconsin didn't even know. My mother's best friends knew. I think mom felt the need to confide in somebody. And you know how you
Mm,
just
mm-hmm.
confide in somebody?
Right.
But to be very honest with you, it was I would call it at that time, a handful of people. The few times Mike and I ever talked about it, Mike is the name of my husband, the father. He did tell me that there were a couple of buddies he had told just because he needed to talk. And I know that there were a girlfriend or two that I had told. My sisters knew. We're not even sure. I don't even think my brothers knew at the time. So it truly was a secret that we kept. So I fabricated a cover story. I was an American Red Cross volunteer at the time, and it gave me the cover I needed. I was able to fake a story that I was going to go out east, and I was going to be working on a special American Red Cross project. And I even had a friend willing to use a fake address for me because truly and really, this was just shame. And that's just the only
Mm,
way. My father was mortified. I had disappointed my father. My mom was a lot more caring and understanding, but oh man, daddy's little girl was not daddy's little good girl anymore. And it was very rough. So we fabricated this cover story involving the American Red Cross. And around the time that I began to show in October, right around my 19th birthday, I went away, like I said, to a home for unwed mothers to live in the home of the woman that was going to be handling the adoption, who,
hmm.
yes, who ultimately is now actually the founder of an organization that we have here in and around Pittsburgh area called the Genesis Organization. And she indeed was the stepping stone of that whole situation. And at that time, there were about 5 or 6 of us there. At any given time, we lived in her home with her pending our pregnancy. And she handled all of the details for us. And that was a lonely and sad time. As I mentioned, no phone, no
Mm-hmm.
cell, no car. Ironically, I tried to get a job. I was employed at a local grocery store at the time, and I had a pretty good, working rapport
Mm-hmm.
with my good working ethic. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be good to be able to work a little job while I'm there out in, it was Glassport, Pennsylvania. And I went in for the interview and took my jacket off, and my belly was sticking out. And the guy said, oh, I don't have a job for you. That was one of a number of kind of
Mm-hmm.
crushing moments. So it was kind of a lonely and sad time. Mike and I were still kind of together. He was in college. He did have a car. He would bop in and visit me now and then. And every once in a while, we'd get out for a restaurant or walk, down the street or something in the town. But for the most part, I was alone out there from October until, well, actually 1 month before my due date. Had gone for what we thought was a regular visit with our doctor. A bunch of us were in the van together, and lo and behold, I got up on the table and he said, "You're not going anywhere. You're in labor."
Oh,
I, I Carol didn't even know I was in labor. I don't think I knew what was to come. I had been having backaches, and I didn't know that a backache could indicate some sort of, and so, kind of a sad part of the story, but it is what it is. Uh, the woman who I was living with had to take the rest of the girls back. And anyway, lo and behold, it ended up that I was alone pretty much the whole day while I labored,
mm,
with this baby. And ironically, it was my mom's birthday. And my mom was supposed to come out that day with two of her best friends. The two girls that I mentioned, I know for a fact knew. I think the only two that knew, to have a birthday celebration. And I didn't even let my mom know I was labor. All I did was called her and I said, "Mom, I'm not feeling really good today." I didn't want her to
mm.
have to go through all that with me. But I labored all day, and the next morning on the 9th of the next day in the wee hours of the morning, he was born. Um, in those days and years, they used an epidural. Can't really say exactly. I don't remember the actual delivery, but they told me I had delivered a baby boy, and spent 3 days in the hospital. Um, did not see him. Made the decision not to see him. Had been counseled that to see him would make the saying goodbye all the harder. So I, listened to the people that was giving me advice, and also went with my heart and head. And third day in, um, brought him into the room, wrapped from head to toe in a blanket, and we matched our bracelets. And he was whisked away to be handed to his new mom and dad. Um, I, I saved that bracelet for many, many, many years, hidden away in my hope chest, down in the bottom of it. And unbelievably, in the year 2010, we had a really bad fire in our home, and I had to go through all of our stuff, and as I had to move it off site, and I found the bracelet down in the hope chest, and kind of in a fit of tears and sadness, threw it away. So I don't even
Oh,
have that.
oh.
Um, Mike and I eventually got back together. When I went home, it was not a good thing. Never spoke about the baby. It was as if it had never happened. Um, Things were especially difficult between my dad and I. And eventually I did move out, got my own place, had to go along and live life. Mike and I did end up getting back together. We got married. We had a family. I had two daughters and two miscarriages, and a lot of crazy years in between of like depression right around his birthday,
Of course.
Mother's Days, and a lot of days in between. But always hoped that what I had done was the right thing.
Looking back in hindsight, do you regret doing it the way you did it?
No. And obviously that's a little bit of our wonderful story and teaser to the whole thing. I don't regret it. It ended up to be a wonderful story.
Okay.
I I think that the beauty of life now is I hope that a woman in the same boat will not have to go through that again. It's just a different generation.
Right.
Pregnancies aren't going to be frowned upon. There are resources in place. There's social media out there. It could to someone, and I wouldn't feel the shame, the awful humiliation, and you know what I mean. I would hope that that scenario wouldn't happen again, but it worked out. It really did work out.
Well, that's amazing, and I appreciate that part of your story. We're going to take a slight 30-second break, and when we come back, we're going to hear the second part of this miraculous ending to your story. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
I've so enjoyed your story so far, Julie, regarding the trauma, the stress, the pain that you went through in deciding to put him up for adoption. So now we are going to go a little deeper into your story of what happened and if you ever reconnected with your baby.
Yes, I'll tell you what. We feel right now like we're just living a beautiful gift and a beautiful miracle. Well, 40 years went on and life goes on, and there was a lot of heartache. I felt like I had a hole in my heart for all those years. I mean, that hole was never filled. We knew it was a boy, and we felt like, oh, he's a man and maybe he's out there in the world. I will tell you that as close as my husband and I are, and as much love as we are in our friendship, it was something we never ever talked about. I could probably say on one hand, and there were years I thought Mike forgot the date, and I would be so upset. And we had good years and bad years, physical and mental manifestation, some counseling. Well, lo and behold, on a beautiful Sunday, it's not a Sunday, Saturday morning in June of 2018, ironically, when I was at a baby shower, my husband got a phone call from his mom. And basically, the son we had placed for adoption over 40 years ago had registered with an ancestry service. And through the service, and of all things, Facebook, had found a cousin. The cousin reached out to my mother-in-law and said, "Do we have any skeletons in our closet? There is some dude that has reached out." I am not kidding, Carol. There's a dude that's reached out to me on Facebook, and he tells me he's my cousin.
Oh,
Well, and of course, my mother-in-law was one of the people that knew. And she said and Mike's cousin did not know, and said, but boy, he kind of looks familiar. He had shared pictures with her and they had connected back and forth. Long story short, our son that we had placed for adoption found us. And I use the word us because not only was he looking for his birth mother, he found his birth biological father, two full-blooded sisters, and a whole family. And the rest is just, it's crazy. We found out that he had gone to the same high school as our daughters, his
oh
sisters.
my goodness.
We found out that he lived and grew up less than 10 miles away. And this was also unbelievable because if anyone knows our area, I was from what was called the North Hills of Pittsburgh. We ultimately moved out to the south due to my job, my husband's job. There was no way anyone could have figured that we would end up within miles of the son that we had
Hmm.
placed for adoption. We got, all right, so we learned some sad news. His mom had died years ago of breast cancer, but his dad was still alive in his 80s. We began to slowly take some little steps to get to know each other.
Hmm.
And ultimately, and I did write a book, and that's how the whole story ended up coming out. It's what started off as just a memoir, kind of to heal my own soul, to for Mike and I to be forced to talk about the thing in the room that we had not talked about for
Right,
well over
right.
40 years. And part of it reminds me of, for any listener who have seen the wonderful movie You've Got Mail, between Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, where he keeps sneaking. I would keep sneaking into peek to see if I had a message from him on Facebook. Um, we found out that we knew the same people, and
Hmm.
there are so many little mini miracles and God winks, and just uh, our story is just. And so yes, he when we met him, we found out he was a 25-year veteran in the Navy. He was an officer in the
Oh
Navy.
my goodness.
He had been Sailor of the Year. He had a beautiful and wonderful life. That was the beauty of this whole thing. He was only looking because actually he adopted for
Oh,
13 years.
huh.
Yes, Carol, I'm not kidding you. For 13 years, he and his wife were unable to get pregnant. He went to the same agency that I had used. They adopted a daughter, and and his wife ended up pregnant with two biological children. And the beauty of the timing of all of this, and that's kind of the name of the book, is The Gift of Time. They didn't have children for 13 years. The children they ended up having ended up being the exact same age range, yes, of
Oh my goodness.
his two biological sisters. So we now have seven biological grandchildren that range in age from 6 to 11 that have become wonderful friends. And he is in our life now, and it's a beautiful life. He also has a brother who's adopted. We've met all them. It was just so when you'd asked me this question earlier in the segment, in hindsight, it turned out beautifully. He thanked
Hmm.
us for the life that
Oh,
he had. He thanked us and appreciated the decision we had made back then. We were young, in college, didn't know. Because I'll tell you, Carol, it worried me greatly, and my husband. And I speak for both my husband and I when I share our
of
story.
course.
There could have been a real double-edged sword here. This wasn't some one-night stand or some guy that I said goodbye to. No, we ended up married with more children. I mean, he could have been like, wow, and you got rid of me. But no,
Yes,
no,
right,
no.
right.
He's a beautiful man. His parents are beautiful people. Kudos and God bless and thank you and hats off to them. And a lot of different heroes in this story, including the strength he had to go looking, the beauty in which he accepted our story, our daughters for opening the door. Not that there will be, I'm sure, ups and downs and ins and outs. But when it's all said and done, I just thank God for the ending as it is. And how beautiful, Carol, when you shared with me your beautiful story. When my story came out and I was finally, after 40 years, could talk about it,
Hmm.
I didn't talk to anybody about this. I was able to share my experience with others. And to have someone put their arm around me and say, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be a mom. Because all those years, all I knew was shame, embarrassment, and humiliation.
Hmm.
What had I done? And then you wonder, have I done the right thing? Your beautiful, hope-filled message to people, if you keep hoping, never, ever, ever give it up, because 40 years later, my hope-filled wish for all
Right.
those years was he having a good life, and he really did.
So he was 40 when
Yes, and I was 60, because by the time my birthday rolled around,
right,
it was
right.
October. Yep, exactly. He was
And
40,
how long did he look for you?
a very short period of time.
Oh.
His wife had bought it. Here's the crazy thing. He isn't even the one that bought the DNA kit. His is in February. So she said when we met her, it was either for his birthday in February 9th or Valentine's Day. He's not sure. A DNA kit. Now, remember, he now has an adopted daughter who's about 5 years, and he's now a dad, and he's thinking, maybe issues are going to come up, or
Mhm. Mhm.
that's really the only reason. Um, so he can't remember if it was not Thanksgiving, Valentine's Day, or his birthday. Come on, do it. All right, I'll do it. Well, that would have been February, March, or April. I'm not kidding you. We got a call by June. So, I mean, this is not one of those long lost family stories. Some of the ones that I had watched that television show one time. Let's be real here. These DNA kits, and if you are on social media, and if a member in your family has, registered like Michael's cousin did, because Michael and I certainly didn't, it could go pretty quick. So all the call came it all happened pretty quickly for him. And then what I got, well, then his mom said, oh, to his cousin, you need to slow down. And what we received that morning was a call from his mom. His mom saying, Mike, your son is looking for you. And he had shared some photos, and Mike shows me this picture, and it looks like
Mm.
his dad.
Oh my
Who is
word.
that? And Mike says, that's our son. And I mean, I almost fell
Of
into the chair.
course. Of course.
So when we wanted to tell the world, including our daughters, about him, I wanted to do it on my terms. And so I sent what I call the letter, quote unquote, to about 120 family and friends. Yes, and they all got it on a particular weekend. And the letter was basically, dear friends and family, and we've got a story to tell you. And I mean to tell you, it was shock. And of course,
Mhm.
by then we'd already told our daughters. But it was in that vein that I'd always kind of wanted to write a book. But folks said, oh man, this is the one you want to write. It's
Mhm.
just a nice story with a lovely ending and just some good news. And for us, I can't even believe what a beautiful. And you know what? The other thing, excuse me, his daughter, when we met other members of the family, heard my other grandchildren calling me grandma. And his daughter said, could I call you grandma? And, that was a light bulb. Oh my gosh, these kids need to know their story, because, all of a sudden this
Mhm.
comes into our life. And so that's kind of what dovetailed that situation. And for me, the revealing, not just verbally, but being forced to write it down, and
Right.
Mike and I to talk and to get it kind of out there, was so healing. It was so healing. And eventually, did I want to publish? Did I not? I talked to my mom. My dad had passed away due to multiple sclerosis. He did not ever get to meet our son. I would hope that he's looking down and hoping it's all good. Uh, my mom said, yeah, gave kind of a stamp of approval, and all the principals involved in the story said, yes, this would be something you would want to share. And man, has that turned out to be wonderful, because I've got to meet other birth moms
Right.
who
Right.
ever shared their story. And, we, to each other, we feel like long lost siblings to be able to cry about it, share our heartache and to talk about the hole that was in our heart for all those years that is finally filled. So, but yeah, hope prevailed this time, Carol. There's just no doubt about it.
Who should buy your book?
I'll tell you what, I have been told, and I'm really, that anyone would enjoy this story.
Okay.
Certainly, I have had birth mothers being gifted this book by the adoptive. So birth moms, absolutely. Adoptive folks that could see the other side of the coin.
Good.
Maybe not knowing what we birth moms had gone through. I'll tell you who else has benefited from this. Adopted children. Because so often they wonder, why did you give me away? And you know what? That isn't what it was. So I've had a lot of that. I've had all kind of different age brackets too. The young women. Wow, Julie, really? Is that what it was like back then? Yes. So someone said to me, this is just a fun old love story, like a Hallmark movie kind of a story.
Right.
It's just a nice story, but definitely it can heal, I think, hearts from all spectrums. Even maybe someone you know of in your family that was adopted. And gosh, every time you turn around, it does seem like there is a story like that. Can just see the story. And I'll tell you, I've had grown men, and I'm not exaggerating, grown men crying during this story, handwritten to me. It's a kind of a quick read, little kind of vignettes of story, kind of back and forth. It's kind of an easy read. Just kind of the beauty and the truth of it. So I think it's just kind of a nice, fun story, and certainly in the adoption world. And I have so enjoyed, and I've gotten a lot out of it myself, Carol, healing both ways.
Yes.
Here, our hearts, my husband, our children. And I'll tell you, our son is very, very proud of it. Was just talking to him last week. He said, I mentioned the book again. Went on Amazon. The darn thing is still going. I just, and for me, my faith has always kept me going. I say thank you, God, for this beautiful, beautiful miracle, this beautiful life that I'm living now. Yes.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, that definitely is it's got all the elements that you want in a good story. It's got the romance, it's got the trauma, it's got the drama, and the ups and the downs, and just over the course of time, everything that you went through, and then to be able to come back full circle and have such an incredible happy ending. It is what everybody wants when they pick up a book and want to read a good, warm, heartwarming story. So I thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else in closing that you would like to add?
Well, I feel like the revealing was so revealing, and maybe you'll get an answer and maybe you won't. But I think when it was all said and done, I still had to trust my own decision, and yes, certainly it's been great to know that it worked out well, but in the end, I know in my heart why it did it, what the reason. And so, but it is certainly wonderful that the hope-filled wish came through. And I thank you for hosting such a beautiful podcast and a place for us to share our stories, Carol. Thank you so much.
Well, you definitely touched my heart. And I know that you have touched many, and I look forward to sharing your story around the world. And thank you again for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.